Much has been made of the role of South Africa's youth in resolving some of the political, social and economic troubles holding them back. Despite a promising glimmer during the fees and the Rhodes must fall movement, the little that has been done to chip away at the obstacles in their path is seemingly not enough. But does leadership lie at the core of the problems that South African youth are facing today? Well, joining us now to discuss the state of youth leadership is the DA Youth Federal leader, Nicholas Nyati, Thabo Malosi, head of students at ActionSA, and ANC's Youth League National Task Team, and Gauteng Legislature member Fasiha Hassan. Gentlemen, good evening and thank you for joining us in the studio. And Fasiha, thank you very much for coming on as well, joining us online. Let's get straight to it. I mean, when we speak of leadership, you're talking of guidance, you're talking of direction, you're talking of authority, which can be expressed in terms of a voice that makes an input. So when we are exploring the leadership of young people today, many will tell you that they have no reason to be happy on this Youth Day. It's not a happy Youth Day because the institutions and maybe even the policy responses are not responding to the needs of young people today. Reflect on that a little bit, on why the role of youth is missing in our institutions and in our policy responses.
Thank you very much for having us as the Democratic Alliance in this platform. I think what South Africans are facing, especially young South Africans, is that we no longer have honest individuals. Honest individuals like Yapi Vilangulu or Hector Peterson, who identify their struggle and are able to say, this is where our struggle comes from. The single biggest challenge that we face as a country is unemployment, youth unemployment. And that challenge or struggle has a cause. That cause is the African National Congress. But the reason why we cannot address that is because we have young people who mislead other young people to say, continue to vote for the ANC because we'll fix this challenge. I was listening to this lady now on the speaking about Ramaphosa. She is saying, even if the ANC does not provide us with jobs, I will vote for it because it is a party of our past. That is what is wrong with South Africa. As South Africans, we need to be honest enough to say this problem is man-made, and the only way to truly fix it is by removing the people who have caused this. How do we take out the ANC and ensure that we create a state that has employment? As the DA, people will say, no, but you guys like bashing. We provide practical solutions. First one being scrap NYDA. Why would you spend 500 million a year on an entity that does not help young people, number one, to upskill, number two, does not assist any entrepreneurs? For you to get funded, you must be a card-carrying member of the ANC. Let's scrap NYDA and take that money and invest in youth opportunity centers. The so-called leaders, Thabo, Thabo, you would know, were saying fees must fall for everyone. Today they're in legislatures. You don't even hear them once speaking about the struggle that they so-called wanted to represent. And I'm very happy that Fasiha is here, because I told young people in 2016 that this is not a solution. We have individuals here who are not honest enough to say the reason why our public institutions are in the mess that they are, the reason why our institutions of higher learning are in the mess that they are, is because of Blaine Nzimande and at the time Jacob Zuma. I was reading last week about Thabang van Staden from the Northern Cape. The gentleman killed himself, committed suicide, live on TikTok. He said he's killing himself because he could not find a job. If you don't believe me, go and check it online. It's there. He said, I cannot find a job. The government is failing me. I'm committing suicide. He killed himself. He could not support his sister and his mother. This ANC government has failed many people. And I ask you, how many Thabangs are there?
Thabo, I'm going to come back to you now. But Fasiha, let's bring you in here. The state is coming up with solutions that are really not solutions. It's a sentiment that many young people would, I suppose, express. And to some extent, you believe them, because when you look at some of the policy responses, when you look at some of these institutions, they mentioned one here, the NYDA, many young people feel these institutions are not accessible, they are not responding to what we need. And I don't know, when the state sits down and comes up with these ideas, whether the voices of young people and their contributions are canvassed enough, or it's just a token to say, all right, give us your opinion, and now we've heard your opinion and that's it. Or are they actually being implemented?
Thanks, Thabo, for having me, and also just want to greet our audience back at home. I'm really glad that you've actually put this forward. You know, youth unemployment is a national crisis. It's not something that any of us are running away from. In fact, we're taking a very head-on approach. And I'm also glad you mentioned this thing about canvassing youth ideas and ideas from young people, because the reality is we have structural youth unemployment. And that means that we're not going to solve it in one particular way. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. The reality is that we do need to find a multi-pronged approach. And today, in fact, in Gauteng, the Gauteng Premier announced a youth advisory panel that's been put together. And that, by the way, Nicholas, is actually a huge victory of young people in the legislature, who we've enforced to get young people from civil society to be at the decision-making table. Because it's not just about us as young activists or young politicians in the space. It's about opening up the space to more young people, making space at that table, but more importantly, moving beyond just the policy. It's about saying, how do we move to that
sorry, Fasiha, let me jump in
and
there.
I'm happy to get into the implementation.
Is this Youth Advisory Council going to just be looking at issues that have got to do with the youth, or will they be looking at issues that have got to do with society, right? Tell you why, because we set up structures that say, no, the youth must lead the youth, but not setting up structures that say the youth must have a voice in societal issues, because that is what's impacting them.
Sure, no, it's cross-cutting. And the reality is, even this idea of youth issues in some ways is a fallacy. Because the same unemployment issues that are faced by young people are also faced by general members of the society. But I fully agree. It needs to go beyond just a policy position. It needs to go into actual implementation. So let's talk action, right? Let's see and do a little bit of an analysis here. I think it was last month, in fact, we passed the Township Economic Development Act, which has a huge focus on youth-owned SMMEs. In fact, there is now a 250 million rand fund that's going to be used to particularly fund these SMMEs, but it's also going to be used to leverage private sector support. So the idea is that we're looking at the high-growth sectors. We're saying, what can we do to enhance those, such as the automotive industry, agriculture, the digital and marketing, the global business services industry, and how do we ensure that we're, number one, giving skills to young people, but number two, we're providing pathways to earnings and pathways to economic opportunity. And let me address the NYDA matter, because I'm glad it's also come up. It's easy to throw stones. It's so easy to say we shouldn't have an NYDA. But the reality is we need an agency that focuses on young people. And in fact, we need to use the NYDA to leverage more funding and more support for young people. What we can have conversations about is making it more accessible. But in no shape or form can anyone ever say that the NYDA is not necessary, not in a country where we have such a huge amount of young people who are unemployed, who are outside of the economy. So I think we need to be practical. I think we need to be pragmatic. But we also have to, talk the talk and walk the walk. And I think we're seeing a lot of that starting to happen. Is it where we should be? Not at all. But we're definitely in a position in which we're pushing that multi-pronged approach so we can actually see some outcome.
Walk the walk, talk the talk. Let's hold it there and come back to you, Thabo. I mean, the debates, the conversations, the arguments are shaped in terms of policy. They are shaped in terms of political institutions. They are shaped in terms of laws. Is there something wrong with that when you understand the spirit of 1976, where conversations were shaped by protests, were shaped by marches, were shaped by popular organization, dissent, and creativity?
Look, Thabo, we are dealing with a different generation here. I mean, the class of 1976, they never had government to speak to. They never had, right that we have, me and Nicholas and my sister Fasiha here. But what I can say here, we do have nice policies in the country. The challenge is that we don't have people with political will, and we don't have accountability in the country. People like Fasiha, they've been actually using the struggle of young people to be where she is today. We have, as my colleague was saying, that there are people in parliament who used our struggle during Fees Must Fall. So I think the problem in South Africa is ANC, and we must never shy away from it. And the more we want to blame this to the past, I don't think we're doing ourselves a favor or justice as young people of this country. We don't need ANC as government in South Africa anymore. I mean, 28 years is too much, my brother, for you to solve problems that are faced by young people in this country. But with the issue of NYDA, I want to tell one thing, that NYDA, we do need it, but NYDA need to be partnered with certain privates that have a track record of creating job in the country. And equally, we need to find banks that can work with it. I mean, I think 40% of the budget that they have, these guys, is going to salaries. And the rest is for these guys to go around touring and telling us that the NYT office, they're opening at 8, at 4 p.m. So I think the solution here is that we need to remove ANC in South Africa. Just like the situation that we had in 1994. I think it was about removing the apartheid government. For as long as we have ANC in South Africa, we'll never test our democracy. We have young people like this one, Fasiha. I call them the rented crowd. They really don't represent the interest of young people of this country.
Why do you say that?
I will say to you, these are young people that they know themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're on the ground. I know Fasiha very well. I mean, she's my friend.
Yeah.
They're on the ground. Students are suffering in South Africa. Youth in particular are suffering in South Africa. They know that themselves. They have access to all these leaders that they're talking about. She's telling us that there's new youth advisory that has been introduced.
Yeah.
We have been having that, my brother.
Yeah.
It doesn't bring any solution. The problem in South Africa remains ANC. And you know why we have this problem, Thabo? We made a mistake, which was not a mistake anyway. We brought people that they never received public service training to come and be in government. Almost all these people that we're talking about today, from the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, he's the class of 1976.
And they are all, you're saying there's no talent there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not the issue of age, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's the issue of political will, to have someone that is willing to give what we want.
Right.
It's not the issue of having young or old president.
Yeah.
The person that we must bring is that person tried and tested. And we made a serious mistake, and I don't think we had a choice anyway from 1994. You cannot trust someone that never built anything for himself, and then they can build their own economy. Yeah. So as ActionSA, we're bringing someone like him and Mashab, who have been tried and tested, he can build something that can run for himself and create jobs for many people in South Africa.
Okay.
None of what we have been produced as the president in South Africa have that track record that he has. Yeah. But now he also brings governance now experience. I mean, he was the mayor in Johannesburg. Right. He has proved that he can make things happen. Okay. With ANC, we'll never go anywhere as the country in this country, my brother.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and explore that a little bit further there. We've got Nyati of the Democratic Alliance, ActionSA's Thabo Malosi, as well as Fasiha Hassan for the African National Congress. We'll take your views as well, 072-110-5584, or otherwise you can tweet us at Newzroom405. Back with you on In Focus, National Youth Day commemoration and a focus tonight here on the show. And we've got Nyati of the Democratic Alliance, ActionSA's Thabo Malosi, as well as Fasiha Hassan, getting a sense from the ANC as well on the pulse of the youth leadership in the country and why we're failing to mainstream youth participation in a manner that seeks to really make the ideas of young people to infiltrate and be part of society. So, Fasiha, a lot of things are being said here. One of them being the opposite effect of having, for example, the Youth League or having people like yourself in the legislature. What is intended to happen, actually, the opposite happens. You see, the guys here, the thorns among the roses, are saying, yeah, Fasiha gets there and she just gets to be a cheerleader for these guys who are already there. There is nothing really new. For example, you mentioned the township economy program. I mean, one of the questions would be asked, who's leading it? How old is the person who's leading it? Is there a youth? Is that somebody who will champion youth ideas? You find that it's not. I mean, how do you respond to it?
Actually, Thabo, the Township Economic Development Act was brought through in the portfolio committee that I've recently been appointed to chair. And it's actually the first piece of provincial legislation that we've passed in many years, but has in fact been championed by young people and by a young person. But let me get into the meat of and the crux of, I think, what we're getting at here. And I think the first thing is that the job of an activist, any activist, is to enter spaces or enter the government or enter into any space where we can make a positive change. And, you know, when we started during Fees Must Fall, It was a fight for accessible higher education. It was a fight against not just free increments, but really around realizing free education, free quality, decolonized education. And as a Fees Must Fall leader, as a founding member of Fees Must Fall, I think I'm in a good position to talk about those things, right? But the more important element here is that we didn't stop there. We rolled up our sleeves. We said, yes, higher education is one issue, but it's one of many, many issues. And the other reality of the matter is that we couldn't just focus on higher education. We needed to get into issues of human settlements, of housing, of sanitation, of basic education, of economic development, of so many different matters. So I think it's really absurd for people to say that young people shouldn't have contested or that young people shouldn't be here when we have such a large number of young people on the outside, not just of the economy, but of the political space. We have so few young MPs, so few young MPLs. And there's a real need for us as young people to contest that space, even outside of party political matters. We need to support young people, and we need to open up the way for other young people to enter as well. So it really is partially about that, but it is also around how do we create meaningful change. And that Youth Advisory Council in Gauteng is actually very new. And it's not something that's just going to be a talk shop. The idea is not just to play oversight, but to connect different government organizations. The idea is that we're having civil society young people, like I said earlier, not members necessarily of the Youth League, of DA, of ActionSA or EFF. These are young people who are grassroots level organizers, who are involved from ICT to the green economy, to different elements of youth development, but in our communities on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And we really need to link those people to the work of policy position, yes, but to its actual implementation, because the idea that we're going to solve this thing as one institution alone, as in the state alone, I think is also a fallacy. This requires the private sector, it requires labor, it requires everyone in the room to play their part. And I think that's a huge,
I'm pressed for time, so let's leave it there for now. Let's give the gentleman an opportunity to respond. Nicholas, the two things, the advisory board is something similar to what we had with the COVID-19 advisory board that would advise, I suppose, the Premier of Gauteng on youth issues. Your response to that, but also what Fasiha is raising, that it was important that they become a part of the governance, not just end up at Fees Must Fall.
Advisory board is the first reason why we're calling for the NYDA to be scrapped. Do you know that the board of NYDA is only mandated to attend 10 board meetings an annum? The person who attends 10 board meetings gets paid 500,000. Imagine what 500,000 can do for a person who wants to start a business. The second aspect, Fasiha has just proven to us everything that is wrong with the ANC. She is saying that the duty of an activist is to enter spaces. That's not the duty of an activist. A duty of an activist is to change and champion change for the people that they represent. That's the first aspect. She speaks about the government wanting to bring in different sectors to work together with them. Let's use the agricultural sector that she spoke about. If you want to bring in the agricultural sector, number one, you are not speaking about tax incentives. They are not offering any tax incentives to the agricultural sector. Their government is increasing fuel prices. That is going to hit the agricultural sector.
I'm not sure if they are not, but because in my conversation with the member of the legislature there was that they are looking at a model of incentivizing the
They
agricultural
say left and they do right. Ramaphosa right now was speaking about the fact, in fact Fasiha was speaking about the fact that they want young people to enter spaces. Yet yesterday they were voting for a 71-year-old to enter a space. She wasn't there. She wasn't convincing her young colleagues to vote for a young person. They wanted a 71-year-old, a grandpa. That's what Fasiha and her cabinet want.
You're talking about the head of intelligence?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
They wanted a 71-year-old.
Right.
One MP from the ANC even stood up and said, if we give a young person like Fasiha to run this country, it will be sold for 15 cents. That is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with an organization that does not care about the future of this country. So we're calling for the NYDA to be scrapped. We're calling for people to vote against people like Fasiha, who continue to mislead young people. You speak about growing the economy, yet on my way here, I face robots that are not working due to load shedding. How are you fixing the economy when you can't even produce electricity, such a basic thing. Let's scrap the state-owned enterprises and allow for the private sector to come and invest and compete for energy. That way we would be creating jobs.
I suppose the position of the Democratic Alliance will be challenged by the opposition, the question of privatization and whether indeed that is the answer to mainstreaming some of the issues of youth participation. But Thabo, let's wrap it up with you. Your sense in terms of the responses that Fasiha has given on activism, on the work of the committee, but also on growing the economy.
Well, you know, Fasiha speaks like he's the president of the country, or I don't know, deputy president of this country. And when she speaks, she must speak on behalf of the ANC. She mustn't involve us to their problems. We all know that ANC does, I mean, they're having a conference this coming December. And that conference is going to tell us who's going to be the president in 2024. I can assure you it's only old person. I don't care which faction that is going to emerge in the ANC. But it doesn't matter anyway. ActionSA is coming over 2024. But now, you know, my brother, how we're going to build the economy of this country? Number one, we don't need ANC. That is the fact. Our problems are ANC in South Africa, and we must keep on saying that. People like Fasiha, they are sellouts. And we must call it the way it is. They've sold us out, and they keep on doing that. These are a group of young people, I call them rented crowd. They've been rented. They don't represent us. They know that. Who are suffering on the ground with their very own questions within the ANC. We have students who are still cannot receive funding. They are there, Fasiha. They can speak to, he can call Ramaphosa. I'm very sure about that. But let's leave that. We need the economy that is going to allow everyone to participate. Government will never create jobs for us. And this is what we've been promised since 19... Our parents were promised this. Yeah. And we cannot fall for this trap. Yeah. Don't be shocked when you see young people are not voting in South Africa. Young people, this generation that we are leading now, they're not fools. Yeah. And the reason why they couldn't actually even give their votes. 2024, they wouldn't have given EFF. No one can give EFF their votes unless you are a fool. And no one also can trust their vote to the DA. Because, I mean, he's my brother, he's my friend, but I can assure you, DA, they don't represent the future of this country. But now we have ActionSA that is coming.
But it's strange that your parties are in a coalition, but it's okay.
No, we are in coalition. We're not one organization.
Yeah, all right. So but you give them your vote. Yeah.
Exactly, to fix the country. And I think this is how the future looks like. But what we are saying is that we need free market economy. We need government to be able to support private sector to progress in South Africa. The reason why we don't have jobs in South Africa is not really the government, because that is not their role. But it's now ANC government have allowed people like COSATU to be involved in terms of giving policies, how people must be employed, and I mean, no one wants that. So let's support private sector. If you need jobs, you need more entrepreneurs.
Right.
That's how you can create jobs. Any country right now that is having, I mean, a less rate of youth unemployment, it's because they have more entrepreneurs. So
I think we agree on that point. Exactly. We disagree on where we're going to.
But now let me challenge Fasiha. Fasiha, if it's possible, I'm not sure. I mean, I know we're in a provincial legislature, but even if you're able to speak to the national government, we need to come back to the basics. Let's bring agriculture back in South Africa. And we're having a national feeding scheme in South Africa.
Yeah.
How many public schools do we have in the country?
Yeah.
Why are we not bringing our small farmers to the party to come and provide food for our children? Whether it's in a village, whether we can't continue to buy food from ShopRite to feed our students, I mean for our learners. We need to build the economy, and the government cannot build that. Government can only create a conducive environment for people in business to prosper. The more you have entrepreneurs, the more you have employees. But now let's come back to the issue that Fasiha is trying to, and then we must expose these people, I think, Prachi.
Yeah.
In South Africa, we have one problem, and we must address it come 2024. As I was saying, that we've been giving people that have never been tested. People that are governing us now, none of them they have ever received, maybe few, if they did. Those who were sent in, like Thabo Malosi, for example, they were sent, I don't know where, UK or wherever, it's fine. People that are governing us now, none of them have ever received public service training. All these guys are from MK.
Yeah.
All these guys were prepared to come and kill and destroy.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the time they came back to South Africa, there was no space for them to do that.
Okay.
The only space was for them to negotiate for this new camera that this new dawn that you're talking about.
Let's wrap it up quickly so that we don't run out of time. Yeah, what did you want to say?
So what I'm trying to say to youth of this country is not, guys, ANC is not in government simply because they enjoy the majority support of the citizens of this country.
Yeah.
It's because young people who are very smart, like myself, like my brother. I lost my brother on this. I hear my brother was talking about someone from Northern, was it not Northern Cape? Yes.
Yeah.
I lost my own brother.
Yeah.
Due to the very same problem.
Yeah.
When the guy couldn't find anything for himself,
right.
He couldn't provide for his, because he was married by that time. I was still at university by that time. He had to commit suicide. So I know what this thing can do to young people in this country. I'm not in politics because of I wanted to, but I was challenged. Because I'm from the dark villages there in Eastern Cape, Matatiela, my brother. And I'm here to say, we need to stand up, guys. Nobody can do it for us, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah. Just like the class of 1976, who are even much blessed. Those guys, they had to do what they did because they never had a government. Yeah. They never had anyone to march to, as we can. Yeah. Wherever they could march, they would be killed. Yeah. And nobody can account. Yeah. So this thing of protest and stuff, I don't think it's helping us anymore. Right. Every 5 years in South Africa, we have one day where all of us, including yourself, my brother, where you need to practice your patriotism. Exactly. Yeah. Where you need to choose who must govern you. Right. This thing of protest, destroying properties, will never help us with anything. All right, Thabo, let's leave it there because we are completely out of time. But let me thank you all for coming on. Fasiha, as always, unfortunately, time is always the enemy, but I appreciate you. And thank you very much for coming. Nicholas, thank you very much for your time as well. And that is where we have to